Most of us walk through life assuming that people are rational, that their actions stem from logic, clear thinking, or honest intent. But if you look a little deeper, if you pause long enough to truly observe human behavior, you'll realize something unsettling yet profoundly important. People are rarely driven by reason. Instead, they are propelled by a swirling mix of emotions, unconscious desires, past wounds, and hidden insecurities. This is one of the foundational insights of The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene, and it aligns perfectly with the timeless truths Machiavelli laid bare centuries ago. To understand people, to truly understand them, you must look past what they say and focus on what motivates them from within. Every interaction, every choice, every reaction is colored by emotional forces that often go unacknowledged. A person might lash out in anger not because of the situation at hand, but because of a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. A coworker might undermine you not out of rational competition, but out of envy they can't even admit to themselves. Friends may offer advice, partners may express concern, or strangers might behave coldly, and you're left puzzled, wondering what went wrong or why their behavior doesn't match their words. That confusion arises when we expect consistency, when we take people at face value. But Greene, and Machiavelli before him, teach us that face value is a mask, a disguise, a socially acceptable veneer designed to hide the truth. And the truth lies in motivation. If you want to navigate life with clarity, if you want to protect your energy and build true influence, you must train your mind to read between the lines. Not with paranoia, not with judgment, but with a quiet, calculated awareness. Begin noticing the gap between what people say and what they do. Pay attention to body language, patterns, inconsistencies. Look for the emotional driver. Is this person seeking approval? Are they masking insecurity with arrogance? Are they protecting their ego by playing the victim? Once you learn to ask these questions silently internally, you begin seeing what others are blind to. This isn't about manipulation, it's about liberation. Because when you understand that people are ruled by emotions they rarely control, you stop expecting them to be perfect, and you stop taking things personally. Someone's rudeness isn't necessarily a reflection of you. Their jealousy doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Their flattery isn't always genuine, and their silence doesn't always equal disinterest. Understanding the emotional logic behind behavior allows you to stay calm in the chaos, focused amidst confusion, and grounded when others are reactive. It gives you the power to respond wisely instead of impulsively. Think of it this way. Most people are moving through the world half asleep, unaware of why they feel what they feel, why they want what they want, or why they sabotage their own progress. Greene's message is a wake-up call. He's saying, don't be like them. Don't let your own unconscious drives control you. And don't let the emotional confusion of others derail you. Instead, become a quiet observer of human nature, not with a cold heart, but with a clear one. When you train yourself to see human behavior as an emotional language, when you recognize that beneath anger lies fear, beneath pride lies shame, beneath ambition lies insecurity, you begin to read people like a map. You can anticipate reactions, you can predict outcomes, you know when to push forward, when to pull back, and when to simply let silence speak louder than action. And this, as both Greene and Machiavelli suggest, is the root of power, not in force or dominance, but in the ability to perceive truth in a world full of illusion. Some people may call this calculating or detached, but in reality it's compassionate. Because when you see people for who they really are, not just who they pretend to be, you stop being disappointed by their flaws. You become more forgiving, more patient, and far less reactive. You realize that most conflict stems not from evil intent, but from emotional immaturity. And rather than getting pulled into other people's chaos, you stand firm in your awareness, grounded in your understanding. The truth is, people are not as mysterious as they seem. They just haven't been taught to look inward, and most are too afraid to do so. But if you can master this law, if you can make it second nature to search for the deeper motive behind every surface action, you'll not only gain clarity in your relationships, you'll become someone others instinctively trust and respect, because you get them, you see them, and in a world where most people feel misunderstood, that alone is a rare and subtle form of influence. It's not about being cynical, it's about being awake. It's about never falling for appearances and learning to read the emotional currents that drive human behavior. When you can do that, you move through life with an edge, calm, composed, and one step ahead. And that edge makes all the difference. One of the most underestimated yet transformative powers you can cultivate in life is the ability to shift your focus away from yourself and turn your attention outward, to observe others, understand them, and study their emotional worlds. In The Laws of Human Nature Robert Greene urges us to recognize how our default tendency is to be self-absorbed. We get caught up in our thoughts, our needs, our anxieties, our dreams, and in doing so, we blind ourselves to the subtle cues, silent emotions, and hidden dynamics that drive the people around us. But when you consciously choose to turn that lens outward, when you make it your mission to read people instead of reacting to them, you begin to unlock a completely different level of social awareness and personal power. Most people don't even realize how trapped they are inside their own heads. They walk into a room and immediately think, "How do I look? What will people think of me? Did I say the right thing?" And as a result, they miss everything that's happening in the room. They miss the nervous glances, the forced laughter, the discomfort behind someone's smile, or the tension building between two quiet bodies in the corner. They miss the real drama, the real story. Greene challenges us to step out of this limited perspective and become a student of human nature, not from a place of ego, but from a place of curiosity and detachment. When you stop needing people to approve of you or validate you, you create space to see them more clearly. You're not blinded by what you want them to think or feel. You can sit quietly and notice. You pick up on the subtle dynamics of power and influence, of attraction and insecurity, of ambition and fear. You begin to detect patterns in behavior, how someone's tone always shifts when they feel threatened, or how their posture stiffens when their authority is questioned. You begin to sense the unspoken, and that ability puts you miles ahead of anyone who's still stuck inside their own head. Greene isn't just talking about empathy in the sentimental sense. He's talking about strategic empathy, the ability to imagine yourself in someone else's mind, to understand their emotional reality, their triggers, their desires, and their fears. It's not about agreeing with them or excusing them. It's about understanding what moves them so you're no longer confused, reactive, or easily manipulated. And that insight, Machiavelli would agree, is invaluable in every sphere of life, from relationships and friendships to business and politics. Think about it. If you can understand what people crave: recognition, admiration, respect, control, you can guide conversations, frame your words, and position yourself in ways that resonate deeply with them. You become someone who just gets it, someone they trust, someone they want to follow or confide in. And this isn't about being fake. It's about aligning your awareness with the truth of human behavior instead of some idealized version of it. Strategic insight doesn't require a high IQ. It requires attention, presence, and restraint. It means not always jumping to speak, not always reacting, not always needing to be seen. It means practicing stillness, observing without judgment, listening without interruption, watching people reveal themselves through their patterns. Over time, you begin to see that everyone is playing out the same emotional scripts over and over again, often without realizing it. And in that recognition, you gain both compassion and power. This shift from self-absorption to strategic observation frees you in a way that most people never experience. Because the moment you stop obsessing over how people see you, you become far more powerful than those still stuck in that trap. You become unpredictable. You gain leverage. You're no longer driven by a need to impress or defend yourself. Instead, you're anchored in awareness, and awareness is power. There's something magnetic about a person who can walk into a room and just rate it, who doesn't need to dominate the conversation, who isn't chasing approval, who simply observes with quiet confidence. That kind of presence is rare, and it's built not through charm or bravado, but through the disciplined practice of stepping outside your ego and becoming a keen observer of others. That's what Greene teaches, and that's what Machiavelli understood. Influence is rooted in perception, and perception comes from presence, not performance. The next time you're in a conversation, try this. Instead of thinking about your next line or how you're being perceived, shift your entire focus to the other person. Watch their eyes, listen to the spaces between their words, notice their rhythm, their energy, their tension. And slowly, you'll start to see the real story beneath the surface, the emotional undercurrent that reveals who they are and what they need. That's where your power lies, not in speaking louder, but in seeing clearer, because the one who sees the most wins the quietest battles. One of the most crucial lessons from the laws of human nature and one of the most echoed truths in Machiavelli's thinking is the importance of recognizing and protecting yourself from destructive personalities. We like to believe that everyone has good intentions, that most people mean well, and that if we're kind, respectful, and sincere, others will respond in kind. But that's not how human nature works, not always. The world is filled with people driven by insecurity, envy, fear, and ego, and many of them have learned to hide it behind charm, humor, or vulnerability. Greene urges us not to be naive. He teaches that part of becoming wise, emotionally grounded, and powerful is learning to identify these toxic types early, and then distancing yourself before they draw you into their drama. It's not about judging people or walking around with a suspicious mindset. It's about recognizing patterns. People who drain your energy usually do it in predictable ways. Some are passive-aggressive. They mask resentment behind sarcasm or backhanded compliments. Some are chronic victims. They always have a sad story, always need saving, and guilt you into carrying their emotional weight. Others are narcissists, charming at first, full of grand stories and false confidence, but quick to turn on you the moment you stop feeding their ego. And then there are those who thrive on chaos, people who create conflict, gossip, and division just to feel in control. The tragedy is, many of them don't even realize they're doing it, but that doesn't make the damage any less real. The reason Greene places so much emphasis on these personality types is because, left unchecked, they can derail your emotional clarity, sabotage your goals, and make you question your own instincts. These are not just difficult people, they are emotional traps. And if you don't learn how to spot them and set firm boundaries, you'll find yourself entangled in relationships that drain you, confuse you, and leave you feeling powerless. That's why this law is so important. It's not just about seeing others clearly, it's about protecting your peace. Machiavelli spoke often of the necessity of understanding the character of those around you, especially those who seek proximity to power. He warned that many people would present themselves as allies while secretly working against your interests. Greene echoes this in modern terms, showing us that human nature hasn't changed. People still envy success. They still resent confidence. They still disguise insecurity as advice or concern. And they still manipulate through flattery, guilt, or need. The key is not to become paranoid, but to become observant. When someone consistently makes you feel drained, uneasy, or guilty, don't ignore that feeling. That's your emotional radar sounding the alarm. Most of us have been conditioned to override that signal, to be nice, to be forgiving, to give people the benefit of the doubt. And yes, compassion matters, but so does self-respect. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's essential. Because the people you allow into your mental and emotional space directly influence your clarity, your focus, and your ability to show up fully in your own life. Toxic people often rely on your confusion. They thrive when you second-guess yourself, when you feel responsible for their moods, or when you believe that their chaos is your problem to solve. But once you begin to see the pattern, the illusion breaks. You start to realize that no matter how much energy you give them, they never change. And that realization gives you the power to step back, not with anger, but with clarity. Greene emphasizes the importance of emotional detachment when dealing with difficult personalities. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to change them. Don't get pulled into arguments, guilt trips, or emotional bait. Instead, observe. Let their patterns speak for themselves. The moment you stop engaging, their influence weakens. Their control begins to slip, and you reclaim your mental space. The beauty of this awareness is that it sharpens your intuition. Once you've learned to spot a narcissist, a manipulator, or a chronic victim, you'll start to see the early signs in new relationships. The red flags will stand out, and instead of falling into old traps, you'll step around them with quiet confidence. You'll choose who gets access to you. You'll stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening, and you'll stop overgiving to those who only take. That's what this law is ultimately about: freedom. The freedom to surround yourself with people who nourish your growth rather than drain it. The freedom to set boundaries without guilt. The freedom to walk away from drama, from emotional manipulation, from the slow erosion of your peace. And when you can do that, when you learn to recognize these personalities early and distance yourself without apology, you no longer live at the mercy of other people's chaos. You live in alignment with your own strength. There's a part of you that you don't show the world. A part filled with envy, anger, insecurity, selfishness, and impulses you've learned to suppress or ignore. Society teaches us to hide these emotions, to pretend they don't exist, to smile through them, to bury them deep under politeness and performance. But Robert Greene, following in the bold psychological footsteps of thinkers like Machiavelli, tells us something very different, something uncomfortable but liberating. He teaches that power doesn't come from denying your darker impulses. It comes from recognizing them, owning them, and then mastering them. Because the most dangerous emotions are not the ones you feel, but the ones you refuse to acknowledge. Most people are terrified of what they find in their own shadow. They're afraid to admit they're jealous of a friend's success. They feel shame for wanting attention, for resenting others, for craving validation. So they pretend. They suppress it, hoping it will disappear, but it doesn't disappear. It shows up in disguised forms: passive aggression, sudden outbursts, or quiet resentment. And while they walk around telling themselves they're good, kind, honest people, their actions reveal the truth. This disconnect is what keeps people stuck, trapped by the very emotions they refuse to face. Greene pulls no punches. He says if you want to be powerful, self-aware, and in control, you must confront your darker nature with brutal honesty. This isn't about glorifying your negative traits. It's about becoming conscious of them so they don't control you from the shadows. Because what you don't own will own you. That jealousy you deny, it leaks out in criticism and comparison. That rage you bury, it bursts out in moments of weakness. That insecurity you pretend you don't have, it drives you to chase approval and settle for less. But the moment you bring those parts into the light without shame, without excuses, you begin the process of true transformation. Greene explains that we are all wired with a full emotional spectrum, and what separates the powerful from the powerless is not morality, but mastery. Those who rise in life aren't the ones who feel less, they're the ones who have made peace with what they feel. They don't let envy consume them, they study it, they trace it back to its root. They use it as fuel to push harder, go deeper, and grow stronger. They don't run from their anger, they understand where it comes from, and how to channel it without letting it destroy their relationships or decisions. They don't let fear drive them, they sit with it, examine it, and move forward anyway. Machiavelli, centuries before Greene, understood this as the essence of leadership and strategy. He knew that men are not born saints, and pretending to be one only makes you weak. In The Prince Asterisk, he warned against leaders who tried to seem virtuous without actually having the strength to act wisely in morally complex situations. To him and to Greene, authenticity meant accepting that we are flawed, driven by self, interest, and emotion, and that real power lies in discipline, not denial. So how do you do that? How do you begin to embrace your dark side without letting it define you? It starts with awareness. When you feel a flash of envy, don't suppress it. Name it. Understand it. Ask yourself what unmet desire it's pointing toward. When you feel the urge to sabotage someone or lash out, pause. Don't act, but don't pretend it didn't cross your mind. That acknowledgement is power. It allows you to choose your response instead of being controlled by a reaction you don't even understand. And over time, that awareness becomes emotional maturity. You stop being surprised by yourself. You stop feeling guilty for being human. And you gain the strength to channel those emotions instead of being consumed by them. The people who appear calm, composed, and powerful are not without darkness. They've just developed the discipline to control it. They don't act on every impulse. They don't lash out when their ego is bruised. They've trained themselves, and that training begins by being radically honest about what lives inside them. You can't transform what you refuse to face, and you can't find peace by pretending the war inside you doesn't exist. Greene's message is clear: your shadow doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. The more aware you are of your own emotional triggers, the less likely you are to be manipulated by others. The more in tune you are with your darker impulses, the less danger they pose. You stop projecting your insecurities onto others. You stop falling into cycles of self-sabotage. You become grounded not in perfection, but in self-possession. Because true power doesn't come from pretending to be light. It comes from knowing your darkness and choosing your light anyway. Influence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's not about demanding attention or asserting dominance. Real influence, lasting, quiet, commanding influence comes from understanding timing, emotional intelligence, and the art of subtlety. That's what Robert Greene points to in The Laws of Human Nature *, and it's exactly what Machiavelli understood centuries earlier. Both men knew that the social game isn't won through brute force or constant visibility. It's won by those who can observe, wait, and move with precision. Those who know when to act, when to hold back, and how to make each gesture count. It's not about manipulation. It's about alignment with the deeper currents of human behavior. We live in a culture that values immediacy. People want instant results, fast recognition, quick wins. But power doesn't work like that. Influence isn't built overnight. It's cultivated through consistency, patience, and a deep understanding of people's needs, fears, and desires. When you rush, when you force, when you try to control others through pressure, you create resistance. People may comply in the moment, but they pull away emotionally. They sense the push, and it unsettles them. But when you operate with patience and subtlety, when your moves feel effortless, almost invisible, people lean in. They trust more, they feel safe, and that emotional opening is where true influence lives. Greene teaches that the key to mastering the social game is self-control. Not just over your emotions, but over your timing, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to assert yourself and when to let someone else feel like they're leading, when to reveal your intentions and when to let them wander. There's power in mystery. There's gravity in restraint. Because when you don't overshare, when you don't explain yourself too much, when you don't force people to see your value, you become more intriguing. You create space for curiosity, and curiosity is magnetic. Machiavelli would say that appearances matter more than declarations. You don't need to tell people how powerful you are. Let them feel it. Let your composure speak louder than your words. Let your ability to remain unshaken in chaos do the talking. That level of quiet confidence disorients those who rely on reaction and drama, and it draws in those who are searching for something solid in a world full of noise. Part of influence is also understanding what drives people. Greene reminds us that most people are walking around with unmet emotional needs. They want to feel important, respected, admired, included. When you can identify those needs without judgment and speak to them in subtle ways, you gain a type of leverage that isn't loud or obvious, but deeply effective. You don't flatter just to flatter. You reinforce something they already want to believe about themselves. You mirror their potential, their value, their importance. And in doing so, you create loyalty. Not through manipulation, but through intentional emotional connection. But there's a line. Influence rooted in desperation, needing to be liked, needing to be accepted, always backfires. It makes people feel pressured, and pressure breeds resistance. That's why Greene emphasizes detachment. You must care, but not too much. You must engage, but never chase. You must invest, but hold the reins loosely. When people sense that you're not dependent on their validation, they lean into your energy more. You become someone they admire, not someone they pity or take for granted. This approach takes discipline. It means resisting the urge to prove yourself. It means playing the long game when others are scrambling for short-term validation. It means choosing your battles wisely, saving your strongest moves for the moments that matter most. Because when every interaction becomes strategic, not in a manipulative way, but in a conscious, intentional way, you start to move through life differently. You stop reacting to everything. You start responding with purpose. There's a rhythm to human interaction, and those who master that rhythm, who learn to pause when others panic, to speak when others hesitate, to wait while others rush, those are the people who rise. Their movements carry weight because they're not impulsive. Their words land deeper because they're not thrown around carelessly. Their presence commands attention without ever needing to beg for it. And that's the art. Influence through presence. Power through patience. Leadership through emotional intelligence. Greene isn't handing out tricks, he's offering a blueprint for long-term, sustainable impact. The kind that doesn't fade when the applause dies. The kind that sticks because it was never about noise. It was about depth. And when you learn to move through the world like that, with grace, with strategy, with calm precision, you stop chasing power. You become it.